Here I have a faulty PlayStation 5 that I paid £200 for. Hopefully I can fix it and then sell it for a profit. The issue supposedly is that it powers on and it goes to a white light, but there is no display to the screen. I don't actually think I've done a PlayStation 5 no display outside of work on the JDT channel. So it'll be extremely interesting to explore without having all the tools and equipment that I have at work, and essentially only using my hobbyist setup at home. Looking at the PS5, initial condition is a digital one, by the way. It seems to be all right. My main focus, I believe, will be the HDMI port that we have on the back of the console, but it is entirely possible that this isn't the issue. If I give it a little bit of a poke, it doesn't seem loose. The plastic on the inside of the HDMI port itself as well doesn't seem to be wiggling around. So we'll plug it in, give it a quick spin up, make sure that it powers on and actually goes to a white light, and just double check that we actually get no display. Do we get power? Yes, we do. Perfect. Now, does this little blue light that we have here go to a white light? Yep, you can just about see here that it goes to a white light. Perfect. So it does essentially turn on. Don't know how well you're going to be able to see this, but this is the HDMI cable here, and look at that. The amount of wiggle we've got on this is crazy. Let's turn off the PlayStation 5 before we cause any unnecessary issues. The profit that we can make from this fix will be really good. In turn, that will make Sally's Spectacular Spreadsheet extremely happy and hopefully continue into that green profit margin. Hopefully being the key word there. Because with Joey Does Tech, you never know. Before I get down to the nitty and gritty and take this console apart, let's have a quick word from our sponsor, PCBWay.
PCBWay is your one-stop shop for everything DIY. Create a custom PCB and have your quote in seconds. The ordering process is made super simple with so many different customizable features for your design. They also specialize in CNC machining, 3D printing, sheet metal fabrication, and injection molding. Why not even go ahead and share your project in the project section of the website? You can't beat PCBWay's prices and express delivery times. Head over to the link in the description for a $5 welcome bonus.
I've just taken the PlayStation 5 top lid off. I've popped the hood, and by the looks of it, somebody has already been inside this console. What does that mean, Joey? Well, I think that instead of it just being a simple HDMI port swap, we could have something a bit more sinister. I could be wrong, of course, but judging by the scratches that we have on the console and the missing screws, we could be in for a treat. They've also put screws back incorrectly. This one seems to be a long one, and this should only be like a really short one, so I don't think it would have done any damage. And that makes me ask the question, I wonder where this one's gone. How's the fan and the fan connector? It seems to be okay. We have another missing screw up the top here as well. And let's pop the hood. What kind of damage do we have? You know what? That doesn't actually look too bad. I don't think we have any, we have one missing silver screw here, two here, but it could have been 10 times worse. Now, the extremely monotonous part, taking out these screws. I did actually mention recently that Kawitz, which again, I don't know if I'm butchering the name, sent me out an electric screwdriver. And the kit itself is actually really, really good. It comes with a load of bits. And this here is the actual electronic screwdriver. The nice thing is that Kawitz themselves just wanted to send me the kit. They didn't want a sponsored segment in the video or anything like that. They didn't even really want a review. I said to them, I'd give it a try, and if I had any feedback, I'd let them know. And I sent them some feedback. What I would say is that I used it on something like this, where I was taking loads of screws from the chassis on this PS5. And one of the main bits of feedback that I had for it is that it just didn't have enough torque. So what I was finding myself doing with the actual screwdriver was twisting and then having to use the button, which in my opinion was a little bit awkwardly placed on the electronic screwdriver. It was like halfway up the shaft rather than like at the bottom. So it just needed a little bit more torque. It did have 2 settings worth of torque, but I just feel like it wasn't enough. But yeah, just in case you were wondering why you don't really see me using it anymore, I actually find it quicker and easier to use a manual screwdriver. But thank you to Kawitz for sending it out. Let's pop the second hood and see what we have. Oh lordy! Look at this HDMI port. You're probably not going to be able to see it until we get under the scope, but I think I found one of the missing screws as well. But I'll try and get it on the overhead camera. You can tell already just by the state of the solder joints that you can see there. It's probably going to need some work. Take off the APU clamp, which hopefully they've not stripped the screws for, which they haven't, to be fair. And when I immediately see that, I do kind of think to myself, I wonder what state the liquid metal is in. Okay, we're going to pop the third hood. How's that liquid metal looking? Yeah, do you know what? Not bad at all. Immediately, we're just going to put some isopropyl alcohol on our cotton bud and just soak up this liquid metal. I will be giving the die a very nice clean as well, just to ensure that we don't have any marks on it and that it's easy for the liquid metal to spread more evenly. Let's take this under the microscope to get a better look at it. Let's look at the money shot. This is the HDMI IC, and to be honest with you, this hasn't been changed, which is good. And then we can start to see a little bit of fluxation to the nation. just here. If we go up, dun, 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 dun. I'm nervous. Dun, 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 dun. Okay, looking at it from this angle, it doesn't look horrendous. I mean, these pins just aren't connected from what I can see, especially if we tilt the board like this. Yeah, not connected in the slightest. And this cap looks like it's holding on for dear life. So we'll have to flow that back in place. This cap here is non-existent, and you can see that the solder in the ground holes supporting the port, like, just, it's not there. I mean, look at that. I'm just literally wiggling it off. I think I could take it off. Is it connected to any pads? No, so that's not connected to any of the pads. Let's check the back. Yup. So yeah, I think we know why this isn't going to work. Luckily, we still have the diode and the cap on the back, so it should be just a straight up replacement. I say straight up, we've obviously got some work to do, and I don't have the tools that I would have at work. So as an example, I would have a heater that I would heat the board up with to make it easier for the port to come off. Obviously, this is not going to be the case here. And the soldering iron that I've got at work is quite powerful. We'll start by removing this port from existence, and then we're just going to tidy everything up. Let's get started.
Now, if I told you that this went smoothly, I'd be completely lying. The port falling off was probably the smoothest thing that occurred in this montage. Removing the previous solder from the ground holes and pads was also a walk in the park. However, everything else after that seemed to be a struggle. I've been using a TS100 soldering iron for the best part of 2 years now and think it might be time to upgrade. The advantage of using a heater for the boards at work is that the solder finds its way through the ground holes and hugs the HDMI port. This simply wasn't happening just by using my hot air gun alone. I think this is because the board wasn't retaining enough heat. There's potential as well that it could have been the flux because I use a different type of flux at work. However, I think the main issue was the heat. Because the solder was struggling to go through the board onto the legs, I thought it would be best to heat up the board and use my soldering iron at the same time. However, the port just ended up falling off again. I wasn't able to get the solder all the way through the board on the ground legs like I can at work, which annoyed me. Through persistence, sweat, and changing a lot of the iron tips, I managed to get the solder part way through to hug the legs. Tinning the pins to the board, which is something I like to do to ensure that I have a solid connection, was also proving a little bit difficult. The Met Cow iron that I use at work has no issues with this, even when the board hasn't been preheated. A mixture of my own incompetence and an out-of-date soldering iron has made this port swap a little bit of a struggle.
Right. That was eventful. I think once you kind of get used to working in a certain environment with certain tools, you take it for granted. Maybe it's time I make a few more investments for the home setup. Let's actually see if this works. I'm going to put it back in the casing and we'll go from there. I guess it'd be interesting to show you the process of how I put the liquid metal back on. I'm a bit stubborn. I don't like it being on this outside bit, which is perfectly fine because there's a glue seal on the die itself. But very much like what I did on the actual main board, I like to group it up and put it all onto the actual die. Just make sure this is all nice and tidy. There's isopropyl alcohol on the end of this cotton bud to make life easier. And then I'll also ball all of this up and just give the die a bit of a scrub just to make sure there's no sticky bits or anything blocking contact from the die to the actual liquid metal. And again, another decent scrub. More isopropyl alcohol on the cotton swab. And again, just keep going. There we go, it's a bit better. Move all of this now into the middle. Just do this little corner up here and now spread the liquid metal on the die. There we go. There's not a huge amount on here, but it's covering it. And I like to do a lot less on the actual board itself because I don't want to, when we squish the boards together, I don't want it to leak out because I have seen that before. So I put just the tiniest blob on the die that's on the motherboard and just give it like a small layer, just a small one. There we go. Now with this next bit, I have already tested the PS5 to make sure that it still turns on, and it does, and it displays an image. I just now need to go ahead and factory reset everything, but we seem to have a fully working PS5. But that should be a nice little profit. Heading over to Sally's Spectacular Spreadsheet, the cost of the PlayStation, like I said, was £200. The part, the HDMI port, I'm gonna put £3, and the sell price, again, should be around about $300. We are selling just a console only. After our eBay fees, this gives us a total profit, gross profit, of £76.30. As always, if we go ahead and just put it down in this box, this brings our total profit to £117.31. Let's hope we can stay in the green. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want to see the last episode of this series, I'll leave a link to it up here. Have a great rest of your weekend, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.